Okay, so the last part of this quilt is to, after you've sewn all the circles in each of your rows together, then the last thing to do is to sew all of your rows together. And so here I've already sewn 3 rows together, and I am going to show you how I am going to attach my 4th row on here. So with back sides facing together, I've lined up this row, and I put a pin at the start and at the end of the row, and then I've also pinned all of the intersections here. I place the pin at all the intersections here to make sure that everything stays lined up. And then I'll also place a pin here at the end. All right, and then sounds like my baby is waking up on the monitor, so I'll try to quickly get this done. Then you're just going to put it here under the sewing machine. Start and end with a back stitch. Remove that pin there. And then just start sewing right down that line that you had previously marked. When you get to the intersections, you want to make sure that you sew through all 4 layers here. And your line should mark right over that. It should line up so that you naturally do that, but you just want to make sure that you sew through all 4 layers. So when I get to the intersections, I usually slow down. Since you have 4 layers there with batting, you might need to lift up your presser foot a little bit and just kind of help push your quilt through those intersections. And then, so there I've sewn through all 4 layers of that first intersection. And I'm just going to keep going. Coming up to the next intersection here. And you know, depending on your machine, this might be a ton easier if you use your walking foot. But this, my machine here, I don't usually need to use that. This is a Pfaff Grand Quilter. And it's a pretty strong industrial kind of sewing machine. So I went over all 4 layers there again. But yeah, if you're having trouble doing this without your walking foot, put on your walking foot and it should make all the difference. Removing that pin. I'm just kind of helping to push my quilt through all 4 of those layers. Or push my quilt through to make sure all 4 layers are sewn. I only have 2 more intersections to go. Slowing down, removing that pin. All 4 layers there. This is my last intersection. Remove that last pin. That stitch with a back stitch. Okay, so I've sewn that row, that 4th row into my quilt. And if you were sure to go over all 4 layers of the intersections here, so here's just kind of a close-up of how that looks like. So I sewed over all 4 layers at the intersections. I hope that's easy to see there. And the lines that you previously marked should just naturally make you do that if you follow the lines. You see here I've sewn over all 4 of the intersections. And so on the back, this is how the back of the quilt is looking like. If you've sewed through all 4 layers, you shouldn't get any holes. So all of your intersections here should all be nicely closed. Okay, and the back looks pretty darn cute too. And I think I'm gonna end this tutorial with this video because the last thing you need to do really to complete this quilt is just to sew the rest of your rows on. So I've sewed 4 rows on, so I still have 2 more rows that I need to sew onto this quilt. And then you're just gonna take this over to the iron all these little flaps down so that they lay nice and flat. You can pin them to help sure that they stay nice and flat. And then you can just take it over to your sewing machine and sew a top stitch right along the edge here, along all of these. And that's my alarm going off, telling me it's time to pick up my son from school. So yeah, so you're just gonna go take this over to the sewing machine and sew a top stitch so that these lay nice and flat. And for my top stitch, I'll probably use I always use a 3.5 inch stitch length. And then yeah, and then I just start and end my stitches with a back stitch, and then you'll have a pretty quilted petal design on the back as well. And on my blog, I'll show some up close pictures of how I did that top stitching. But that's all there is to it, and if you're not a fan of binding, then this quilt is awesome for you because once you've sewn on all the rows, there's no binding needed and you are all done. Well, after you sew down the little petals, then you're all done. And that's all there is to it. It's a super simple quilt, and it's has a beautiful finish.